of seven.
On this best of seven series
of a best of seven series.
Welcome to the Best of Seven podcast.
Welcome to the Best of Seven podcast. This is episode number 4 of the Best of Seven podcast. I am your host, Brandon Plant from Sens. I am joined here by co-host Noah Luden.
Hey, guys.
And, of course, Brandon Maki.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
From Internal Budget. Check out the show. It's really good, but we'll get to that soon. Firstly, some terrible news early this morning. Edmonton Oilers forward Colby Cave, at the age of 25, tragically passed away after being placed in medically induced coma due to a brain bleed. On behalf of the Best of Seven podcast, Senstock, and myself, our thoughts, prayers, and condolences with the Cave family and Edmonton Oilers organization at this time. On a brighter note, today is National Poutine Day, so make sure to eat some poutine and get those cheese curds into your mouth. As well, happy Easter and Chag Sameach, or happy Passover to all those who celebrate. Now, the news of the week in the sports world is actually a good amount. Firstly, Major League Baseball considering a huge divisional realignment for the 2020 season, which could see even the Blue Jays joining the Phillies in the same division. What do you guys think about that? That is crazy.
Oh, God. I don't understand. I think they could just keep the same divisions. But, hey, if that's what they think works, then so be it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of change for change's sake.
Yeah.
So that's what it kind of reeks of to me. But we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll end up working if it does go through. So who knows?
I think the reason they're doing that is mostly just because of they have to work around the virus, and they're putting teams in Florida and they're putting teams in Arizona. So we'll see. But once again, it's early stages. Once we get more info, we can dive into that. As well, Tokyo Olympics might be postponed past 2021. We'll see. UFC 249 canceled, and all other events were postponed indefinitely. Dana White, president of UFC, did say that it's just postponed for now. They will have fights in the future. They're just working on some details, to stay tuned for that. As well, a member of the 1972 Summit Series Team Canada, Pat Stapleton, unfortunately passed away at the age of 79. Our thoughts and prayers with the family. Rest in peace, of course. The Belarus Soccer League. I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw the Belarusian Soccer Federation. They haven't stopped their season. They're still going on. There's games on TV. They're on YouTube. That is insane. If you want to check that out, watch some soccer, I guess, go ahead. That's the only sports we have left. As well, Major League Baseball may be returning in May, like we spoke about the division. Bundesliga, more soccer. They're aiming to return in early May. So if they return in early May, that's really good news for baseball potentially returning, because Europe is really, really bad right now with the COVID-19. So is the United States, but Europe as a whole has a lot. So if Germany is comfortable opening up their league without fans, of course, in the stadiums, but sports games going on, that's a good sign for things to come for us. And finally, the XFL.
This is the XFL.
Suspends operations and no plan to return in 2021. It's very unfortunate. So, Brandon, tell us about yourself, where you're from, etc.
Yeah, so I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario. I was born and raised in the Nickel City. Hey, buddy, I'm being attacked now. So born in Sudbury. I moved to Toronto for school. I came here to U of T on a football scholarship. From there, sorry about this. So from there, I ended up having to stop playing due to concussions, but been a Sens fan my whole life. Started covering for Silver 7 in 2018, summer of 2018. So it's been 2 great years there. I've really enjoyed what I've been doing. And I started up the podcast in December. So yeah, that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of the history of Brandon.
Speaking of the podcast in Silver 7, did you want to tell people where they can check you out? Because I was on one of the episodes. It's really good. I listen every week. He had Ian Mendes on a week or 2 ago, so really check it out. So why don't you tell everyone where they can check you out?
So all the writings at silver7sens.com. The podcast is wherever you can find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, every podcasting platform, we're on there.
All right. So, Brandon, you obviously have your podcast Internal Budget, but what gave you the inspiration to start it up?
It was more just about me trying to diversify what I was doing. I love doing the writing aspect of things, but I kind of wanted to expand and try something new. So I figured a podcast was a good way to put myself out there. I like talking. I'm a big talker. So once I got used to being in front of a microphone, it just kind of became second nature to me. And it's kind of expanded and transformed from what it was originally. I used to do more just solo episodes for half an hour. Now I've been doing like 90-minute guest features. Like Brandon said, I had Ian Mendez on last week, and we did a 90-minute episode, and it was just phenomenal. So I like doing the guest aspect of it, but yeah, I just kind of like talking to people, especially now with the way things are.
For sure.
Everybody's kind of desperate for some connection, and even if we don't talk about sports and we just kind of just talk. I think that's something that people have enjoyed about it, and I've enjoyed getting different perspectives on it, especially from journalists who are all kind of screwed up now. It's usually their livelihood to cover sports, and now there's no sports to cover. So I've been interested to get their perspective on things. I had Ian Mendez on. I had Haley Salvian of The Athletic on. And I'm trying to get more people on. I have some cool stuff planned in the next few weeks that I think you guys are going to like. But yeah, we're, I think, 13 weeks in now to the podcast. I started up in January. This Sunday is episode 13. But that's kind of the story of the podcast, the story of Internal Budget. The name was something I came up with. I wanted to kind of relate it to the Sens as best I could. And I thought it was kind of a funny way to, a funny, play on words, because obviously I'm on a shoestring budget here living in downtown Toronto, and so are the Sens. So that worked. And Gatineau Greg, who you could find on Twitter, he did a great job doing the artwork for me. So hopefully I can get some merch going soon, get some t-shirts out, because I think it would look great on some shirts.
I agree. Like a nice gray sweater, having that on the back, that would be, I might even buy that, to be honest.
I'd love to hear that.
Moving forward now, you mentioned that you're from Sudbury, you live in Toronto, and you're a Sens fan. That isn't very common. So why don't you tell us how you became a fan of the Ottawa Sens?
It's a story I've told a few times now, but essentially what happened was I was kind of a casual hockey fan. I was really young, about 8 years old. My dad made a trip to Ottawa to see a Sens game with a friend who had season tickets. He brought me back a copy of the Score magazine, their game day publication, and it's kind of funny. Like, he gave me the magazine because he thought I would like it. I just kind of flipped through it, and I just became fascinated by it. I right away latched on to my favorite players. Mike Fisher became my favorite player. And it was a good time to jump on board, right? Because it was January of 2007, so that was right before the Stanley Cup final run, right? So
that is prime time.
So I got to. So that was kind of my first experience as a fan. Sorry, he'll shut up in a second there. Okay. But yeah, so that was how I became a fan, and I've just been stuck ever since. I can't get out.
Yeah, stuck is the proper word for it, because you came on a huge high. We crashed. We came kind of back up, and then we crashed even deeper somehow. So kudos to you for sticking on through it this whole time.
It hasn't been easy.
It hasn't been easy at all, I agree.
So although it hasn't been easy, there have been a lot of big moments, really exciting moments. There have been 3 really deep playoff runs. There's obviously the Hamburglar run, many moments in Ottawa Senators history. But which one is your favorite?
My favorite would have to be, if we're talking like singular moment in time, it would probably be Kyle Turris's overtime winner against the Rangers in 2017, just because I was at that game, and it was a great day as an afternoon game. So it was a great day with my dad, just a really cool experience. And I actually called Turris to score the winner before it went to overtime. He was my pick to score the goal, so it was just wicked.
Kyle Turris, this guy, we got to talk about him for a sec. I don't know what he has in his blood, but he has the scoring ability to score in overtime every single time he's in overtime in the playoffs. I think he has 3 big overtime winners for the Sens, 2 against the Rangers and 1 against the Habs. I remember the Habs one was a fluky one, that one past Budai's. I will never forget that. I was sitting on the couch, since we're talking about the moments, and I was sitting on my couch, and I was sitting with my family who's from Montreal, okay? So it's literally me and a bunch of Habs fans in Laval, okay? And that's not a good vibe, okay? And then Turris just flicks it past Budai, and I lose my effing mind. And they're all just sitting there. They're like, be respectful. I'm like, hell no, I'm going crazy. But yeah, Kyle Turris, great choice. What I would say, though, and we'll get to Noah's pick, I was at game 1 and 2 of the 2017 playoffs. And, I have a lot of other favorite memories, like McCulloch's shorthanded goal against the Penguins in 2013. I'd never heard the barn louder than that.
I was there for that one, too, yeah.
How loud was it? Like
it was ridiculous. That was the first playoff game I had ever been to, and everyone was riding high because that was right after Greening's overtime winner in Game 3, and that goal might have been louder than Turris's overtime winner. I was right up in the nosebleeds, and the crowd just exploded. I've never heard anything like it.
I think that might have been the loudest the Senators faithful have ever been. Like, I think that was louder than Colin Greening. It was just the fan base felt like, holy crap, right? Like, this is actually going to happen. It didn't. We lost 7-3 in that game. Yeah. But in Game 1, we didn't allow any shots to the Bruins. We lost it, of course, because it's Ottawa. But Game 2, that Brassard goal from Carlson, and then I saw the Phaneuf overtime winner. Game 2 might have been the best game I've seen in my life. So that's my favorite Sens moment. Noah, what's yours?
I gotta say, Game 6 in Pittsburgh, we gotta just keep on the trend of games that I've been to, and I've been to one Sens playoff game, and Game 6 against the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2017. I was begging and begging to get tickets to go to any Sens playoff game, and finally I'm like, Dad, this might be the last playoff game in Ottawa for a while. Can I get tickets? I got a yes. I was so excited, and man, the atmosphere was just crazy. It shows that Ottawa does have fans, and really passionate fans. And when Bobby Ryan scored that power play goal, oh my goodness, because the Pittsburgh had been pressuring, and there had been a goal that was disallowed by Trevor Daley, I think, and then Malkin scored. And then when Bobby Ryan scored, the arena just erupted.
I think when you look at that, well, like you said with the Sens fan base, I have never seen so many Sens fans on their feet for final minute of play. The whole building was standing. It felt like a basketball game, you know, when they're saying defense when the home team's up by 1. The Senators fan base has never that run was special, but that moment what you just said was special because if you watch the replay, it was just a moment of unity between every single person in the building. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was an incredible game, and the sound of the crowd after Hoffman's shot went off the post and in, just that sound, the ping, and then the crowd exploding was like that.
That's one of my favorite goals.
I miss those days.
It was so surprising because the shot was like from the top of the face-off circle, so no one actually expected it to go in. So when I saw it, I'm like, okay, there's Hoffman with the puck. Oh, damn, okay.
I love how in the goal you can hear the shot, ping, a second of, you know, like everyone's like, holy crap. And then everyone realizes it's in, and then like everything just blows. It's just, if you're watching this or listening to this, click off this podcast when you're done listening and watching it. Watch the replay of Mike Hoffman's goal, and you'll understand what I mean. Moving forward now, we all know the Senators have the second and third best odds at the first overall pick. We don't know when that pick's going to be selected, but eventually it will be. But if the Sens drop to the 5th and 6th overall, who do you expect them to take, and or what do you expect them to do with those picks?
For me, there's 2 major positions of need for the Senators. One is obviously center, and the other is right-handed defenseman. The news broke the other day that Jacob Bernard-Docker is going back to UND for next season, so that's one potential guy that won't be there next year. So I think Jamie Drysdale would be a guy if he falls to that 5th or 6th spot. That's a no-brainer for Ottawa. But if we're talking if they have this 5th and the 6th pick, I think you take Drysdale with the 6th, and in the 5th you try to get a center. Whether that's Marco Rossi by that point, that would certainly be a decent consolation for not picking in the top 4. I love Rossi. He's a smaller guy. That's one of the big knocks on his game. But his lower body strength is just nuts. Like, he's so good at holding guys off the puck in the corner. It's like Crosby, like the way he plays with that lower body strength. So Rossi, it would be one guy I would target, and Drysdale would definitely be the other.
Completely agree, but we're looking at the positional needs for the team. And I like drafting by skill and who's best. But let's take a look. You know, Ottawa, very unpredictable. We all thought they were going to take Zadina. They took Brady Tkachuk. So let's take a look at the 5th and 6th for a second. We have 3 centers in the organization who are projected to be NHLers. So if I'm Pierre Dorian and I see that, who knows? Maybe he'll want to take a winger because their wingers are really depleted. You only have a few like Batherson, Formanton, etc. So maybe they take someone like Jack Quinn. Would you be upset about that?
I'm trying my best not to be upset about picks anymore, just because I was so wrong about Brady Kachuk.
I was terribly wrong too.
But I think picking Jack Quinn in the top 10 would be a mistake. I think you need the center. You mentioned that the wingers are depleted, and I agree with that. But I'm of the opinion that the center is more of a dire need for Ottawa because they have top line wingers, right? They have Brady Kachuk, who's unquestionably a top line left winger. They have Drake Batherson, who I think next year will show that he's at least a top 6 right winger. You don't really have a guy that is a bona fide number 1 center. So that's something that Ottawa desperately needs if they're serious about competing in a few years. So I would rather them take a center in the top 10, which makes Rossi a good fit in my mind. Jack Quinn's a great player. If Ottawa could snag him even with the Islanders pick, I think that would be huge. But in the top 10, I don't know if I like that.
I'll have to agree with you because with a center, you always have the option to put them on the wing. I'm just trying to give another perspective, but I have to agree with you. If I'm Ottawa, you're taking the best player and you're taking the player with the most potential and the most trade value too. If it doesn't work out, you can get rid of him, get something back. That is what Marco Rossi is. Hell of a skilled type of player. And on top of that, has the ability to do things that you haven't seen out of a lot of players that short. So he's a great player. I would not be upset with it. But Noah, a former classmate of Jack Quinn, what do you think about this?
Yeah, the rise of Jack Quinn is kind of funny, actually, because I think at the beginning of the season, Button or one of those guys had him at like 3rd or 4th round, and then he's jumped up to 2nd round, and maybe he'll be a 1st rounder. Now everyone's talking about him being like a top 10, 15 round pick. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I was in his math class in grade 12. Pretty funny. But yeah, I think, is there any opportunity that the Sens maybe can trade up? But I know that it's a big thing in football that more teams trade up in draft picks. But do the Sens trade up because they have so many draft picks?
If you wanted to tackle the question first.
Yeah, it's something I could see happening. If they're going to do it, I would rather them trade 2nd round picks than trade that Islander pick. I think any firsts you have, hold on to them. Yeah, but I mean, they have such a boatload of picks. I'm more of a fan of them trading those picks for players because they're getting to a point now where they need guys that can fill in at NHL roster spots, right? So picks are great. You can never have too many. But for right now, I think the smarter thing for Ottawa to do would be to move picks for actual assets, maybe young guys that are kind of struggling to find a home. Pulya Yarvi's been a guy that's been thrown around for over a year now, who I think would be a great fit in Ottawa. Maybe a Josh Hosang they take a flyer on. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I would like to see Ottawa kind of trade for either a nice right-handed defenseman or a top 6 winger.
I was looking at that first round pick. And what I'm thinking about that pick is we have 2 picks probably in the top 5, knock on wood, but probably in the top 5. So there's your top 6 winger and there's your other whatever. So you don't have to worry about that. With that first round pick, you can get, like Brandon said, you can get a good right-handed defenseman, which we need desperately. So if I'm Pierre Dorion, you trying to compete sort of next year or trying to build for the future, get a young, skilled defenseman with that first round pick. That's what I would do.
Yeah, big agree. It's a great idea because the Sens just need really skilled players, and it sounds like a really basic statement, but it's true. They have a lot of prospects, but the young players that can play in the NHL right now is something that they're really in need for sure. But moving on,
before you get to the question, I just want to mention one thing. Jack Quinn's success. I know he's, like you said, he really rose up, but I think Jack Quinn's success makes Marco Rossi look much better because he was winged with him. So Marco Rossi is the reason for Jack Quinn's success. Maybe. I think Jack Quinn has plenty of skill, but I think Marco Rossi had a big factor in why Jack Quinn has risen through the ranks so fast. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to put that out there.
Not a problem. All right. So there are like 5 or 6 goalie options for Ottawa. They got Hogberg, they got Decor, they got Sogar, they got Gustafsson. They still have Anders Nilsson, and even like later round guys like Kevin Mandolese. They're all floating around there. who is like the top dog to be the starter in the next few years, or do they draft someone else?
Well, right now, I think you have to say Marcus Hogberg with the season he had and the progression that he's made now. To me, he seems like the best candidate. This is something that Ian Mendez and I talked about last week. How many games did the Senators lose in overtime in a shootout this year when Hogberg was starting? Right? He held them. Like, the Senators are a bad team, and Hogberg held them in games that they had no right to be in or to even have a chance to win. So just that kind of poise is what I look for with goaltenders, and that was something I was really impressed by. The other thing you got to take into consideration, right, is if all goes according to plan, the Senators are only going to get better from here, and they're going to be giving up less shots and less scoring opportunities. So Hogberg isn't going to have to stand on his head every night. But now you know that when you need him to, he will. So just based on how far along they are, like Hogberg's 25, 26 now. Yeah. So I think he has to be the guy for right now. I think after that, Joey Decord would probably be the next candidate. Gustafson's been good, but he's yet to kind of really hit his stride and excel. He had a great month of January. He was the goaltender of the month in January in the AHL. And after that, everyone's kind of a wild card from then on. Sogard, we don't know what he's going to be. He kind of didn't have an amazing season this year. From there, Mandalese had a really good season, actually. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with how those guys develop. Goaltenders are tricky, right? Yeah. You could have a first round goaltender that completely falls off a cliff, and then it's your fifth, sixth round goaltender that's, that ends up being your starter long term. So if I had to hedge my bets on one guy right now for at least the next few years, it's going to be Marcus Hogberg for sure. I think what happens next year is you ride with that Hogberg-Nilsson tandem. They're both up for contract next summer, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And then you can make the decision from there, right? If one of the young guys is ready, you call them up to back up Hogberg. Or if you like Nilsson, you hang on to Nilsson. But the scenario I see it kind of going in would be Hogberg Nilsson next year, and then probably Hogberg and maybe Decord or someone else the year after.
Well, I think Nilsson might be signed for one more year after next year because he signed a 3-year deal.
It might be. I know him and Hogberg, they expire the same summer though.
Okay, so then it would be this summer.
So yeah, it's my mistake.
That's okay. But what I'm thinking is Marcus Hogberg, if you go back to, I agree, Marcus Hogberg is the future because this is why. When you go back to when he was playing professionally in Sweden with the top league, his first year he was okay. The second year he really progressed. You go to AHL, first year in the ECHL, first year in the AHL, second year where he's really playing, all of a sudden Belleville's in playoff contention. He starts playing some games in the National Hockey League. 880, 890 save percentage, This year, fantastic. It's the progression that we've seen in 3 leagues now for Marcus Hogberg. I think he is going to end up being the Sens starter next year. I think he's going to take the helm over Anders Nilsson because this guy has the poise, like you said. He has the athleticism, like you said. He's flexible. He can dive. He can do this and that. Guy looks like a young Jonathan Quick with the amount of big stops he makes every game. Remember with Jonathan Quick, like in 2013, how he used to always dive and stuff, maybe Dominic Hasek. Not comparing him to those. I'm just saying he looks like it. But yeah, I think he is the future starter for your Ottawa Senators. It's just the progression is just following what happened with Sweden and AHL. It looks like it's about to happen in the National Hockey League as well. Noah, what do you think?
Yeah, Hogberg seems to be the guy. Like, he's the safe pick because you know what you have in Hogberg. You saw what he did last year. And, yeah, like Brandon said, he played with some really bad lines and a terrible Sens team, and he still kept them in the game, and that's something that's really valuable. So I'd say Hogberg, but in the future, like 5 years down the road maybe, I might look at a guy like Joey Decord, who has slowly been getting better, and I might look at him as the guy. But again, you see what Hogberg wants in terms of money, how he does between now and 5 years. There's a lot to determine who's the starter.
Speaking of determining the starter, Senators head coach DJ Smith, he makes those decisions. Now let's talk about DJ Smith for a sec. I think we all can agree it's been a much better beginning to his tenure than we thought. He's playing the young guys on the top 6 line, on the top 2 lines, which is something that a lot of former Sens coach would not have done. He is really implementing the youth movement. He has a positive attitude, and a positive attitude, not like Mike Babcock and those ancient hockey guys, a really positive 2020 attitude. So, Brandon, between 1 and 10, or just rated in general, what do you think about DJ Smith, his first year as a Senators head coach?
I'd probably give DJ Smith somewhere in that kind of 8.5 out of 10 range. I've been really pleased. I know some people weren't. I know they objected to his deployment of certain players and even his use of the young guys. But this year is such a crapshoot for the Senators. Like, it's hard to really take anything that happens seriously. The main thing that we needed to see was progression from the young players, and we saw that. Drake Batherson turned into an NHL player. Logan Brown showed flashes of an NHL player. Eric Brandstrom improved. Hogberg turned into an NHL goaltender. I mean, I think the minor gripes that you may have, people think he didn't give Logan Brown enough of a shot. I mean, fair, but we also don't know the goings on behind the scenes, right? There could have been not necessarily off-ice reasons for that, but reasons beyond what we saw on a game-to-game basis. And on top of that, the deployment of Dylan DeMello, I know some people weren't happy with. But
I wasn't happy about that either.
Yeah, and I get that. And this is something that I talked about on Third Line Plug Sensecast last week, which you should check out. They do a great job. But we talked about this, and it's hard for me to really be upset about it, because can you argue that DeMello was a better partner for Shabbat than Zaitsev? Yeah, but every coach has their guys. Zaitsev is one of Smith's guys. And the thing with DeMello, too, is wherever you put that guy, he's going to do well. He elevated Mark Borowiecki's game, being partnered with him all year, right? So is it really a bad thing that DeMello was paired with Boro all year? I don't know. I would hesitate to call it a bad thing. But, yeah, I think all in all, I really can't say anything overly negative about Smith. There was definitely more structure this year. I think, there was no structure with that, especially near the end of that Guy Boucher team. Better structure, and the work ethic was there. It seems like these guys are just battling every night, regardless of the circumstances. Right. So I can't really object to anything DJ Smith did this year. What
I'd say about DJ Smith is he's putting a culture that will end up giving us a Stanley Cup. A hard-working, hard-nosed team is exactly what you want with skill. It sort of reminds me of the Boston Bruins. They're hard-hitting, but they're also lovable at the same time. If you're a Bruins fan, you love your team. If you're a Sens fan, you love your team. DJ Smith, while I disagreed with him a few times, I can probably name the amount of disagreements I've had with him on one hand, which is very good if you're the head coach, because with Guy Boucher, I probably have to hold a basket full of things I disagreed with him. DJ Smith, the culture he's installing into the Ottawa Senators organization is exactly what we need after a disastrous 2 years of drama. And on top of that, you mentioned Logan Brown. There seems to be sort of an issue between him and the organization, it seems. He's sort of called out the org. He's saying that he should be in the National Hockey League, and the organization sort of being quiet about it. But what I would say about Logan Brown is when I was in Belleville this year, Belleville, Jersey. We're in the B, by the way, because it's two Brandons. What I'd say is I love Logan Brown, has all the potential and the size, and he has the potential to be a top-line center, but he's just getting injured when he's starting to get hot, and when he's not injured and, not playing well, he seems to be sort of upset. So I don't know what's going on. Hopefully he pulls out of it, whatever's going on, because he has all the potential in the world, and hopefully Ottawa gives him even more of a leash, because I don't think he's done. A lot of people are trying to write him off. I think give him another couple of years. He's still young, and sometimes it takes people longer than others to figure it out. So hopefully he'll figure it out soon.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to Brown, I don't think the jury's out yet, but I think you're kind of getting into that time frame where it's like, okay, you got to show me something. And he has improved, right? I think one knock on his game this year was that he didn't excel when he was in Belleville necessarily. He didn't put up Batherson numbers. He didn't put up Norris numbers.
Or Formerton.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big reason for that was he did, like you said, he struggled with some injuries. So if he can stay healthy, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. I think the big indicator for Brown next year will be at training camp. If he can turn into that top six center this year, then I think that is, even if it's for half the season and then he goes back to Belleville or vice versa, I think that'll tell the story of his future. If he spends another whole year in Belleville next year and he doesn't really put up any huge numbers, I mean, you got to start considering using him as a trade chip.
I think you can also just take a look at the organization's tone with this whole thing, and the fact that, listen, this guy was drafted 4 years ago now. I think Brandon,
Yeah, 2016.
2016.
We're on year number 4. So now if I'm in the organization, I'm like, show me the money, show me something. Why do we need to keep you? So if Logan Brown's watching this, probably not, but if you are, if I were you, Logan, just put those points up, work as hard as you can, grind it out for half the season in Belleville. They'll probably call you up, and then you should be able to stay in the National Hockey League. That is if you're worth being in the National Hockey League. You really got to prove it to this organization because they clearly don't seem too high on you right now. So give them a reason to be high on you. I'm not high on Logan Brown, but I still think he'll be a solid top 9 forward of the National Hockey League. I'm begging Logan Brown, show us something, please. Just show us something and stay healthy.
Right. Yeah. He's sort of for me, I'm not high on him either, but he does have attributes of like the future of forwards. He's really big. He's really he's like big, heavy forward with a lot of skill. And that's something that we've seen now in the draft. There's Quentin Byfield. He's big and he has a lot of skill. And he has all the potential to do that. It's just hasn't shown yet. In his brief NHL experience, there hasn't been much to cheer about. And hopefully, I think this year or next season, he can break out as a legitimate prospect at the center position for Ottawa. But it's going to take some time. But I believe in DJ Smith that he can mold Logan Brown into a solid NHL player.
He has elite level playmaking ability. We've seen it, right? Like some of the passes he made are just
dirty,
gross, and his vision is phenomenal. Like he has the makings of a top line playmaker in the NHL. If for Logan Brown to have success, it's going to be a question of if Logan Brown can figure out how to have success. So I think that's the big thing we're looking for.
It just all has to come together at the same time, and God forbid, just hit the injuries out of the way, just get them out of the way. Hopefully it all comes together. Like you said, it's up to Logan Brown for his National Hockey League future. Noah?
So there have been good coaches like DJ Smith who can mold their players, who has shown this year that he really did help Mark Borowiecki excel this year and become a really solid defenseman. But are there any coaches in the Sens past that you might want it, you either wanted them to have more of a chance or you want to see them back as a head coach somewhere else?
I mean, I think if I could have one coach back, it would probably be Brian Murray, just for obvious reasons. Yeah, and obviously, wishing he was still around. But also, it seemed like he always got the most out of that team, whether he was behind the bench or as a general manager. And he had a good handle on the relationship with ownership too. So if I had to have one guy back, I would probably say Brian Murray.
And on top of that, with Brian Murray, you mentioned the ownership aspect. The reason we didn't hear about all the fiascos going behind the scenes was because of Brian Murray. I don't know how he dealt with Eugene Melnyk, and I don't know how he got that relationship with him. I think Brian Murray was honestly one of the only people in the hockey world who Melnyk respected and listened to. So it's unfortunate for obviously other reasons, but it's just unfortunate in general that Brian Murray passed away tragically. And it's unleashed to Melnyk, but overall, Brian Murray, the Sens were good with him behind the bench, and the Sens were great with him as a general manager. Just one of the best hockey minds the Senators organization will ever see for sure.
For me, what makes my opinion on Brian Murray, he was such a great general manager. And this is, for me, one story that pops out is when Mike Fisher got traded. And a lot of Sens were getting traded. I think that was the time when Chris Kelly was getting dealt to Boston and Kovalev got dealt. Oh my God, Kovalev.
Yeah, it was the rebuild.
And so all these guys are getting dealt, and he's going to trade Fisher, right? But not only does he handle it well, he handles it great. He trades him to Nashville so he can be with Carrie Underwood, his wife, and it's so great how he was thinking for the players a little bit, but also thinking for the organization. That was one of my favorite parts of Brian Murray's tenure, for sure.
all I've heard about Brian Murray is nothing but good things. And if you only hear good things when you're talking one-on-one with somebody about somebody, that tells you all you need to know about somebody. The guy was a hockey legend and a great person in general. And obviously the hockey community misses him, but I think the auto community really misses him because I don't think we understood at the time, but Brian Murray was the glue to the organization and the community. And, I think unfortunately we didn't see it at the time, but now we see it.
For sure. So now there's another GM. After Brian Murray was out as GM, in comes Pierre Dorion, and he's had a rocky tenure as a Senators general manager. He was known as a really good scout. He can find talent. That's not something that's really in question. But there have been some good trades. Like there have been the Carlson trade, which at the time, obviously, everyone was devastated. It's a tragedy. But right now, it's not looking too bad. And then you got deals on the other side where he's sending, like that whole Duchesne trade and all of that really didn't help Ottawa. And then you have the Burrows for Dolan trade, which didn't look great either. What grades would you give Pierre Dorion individually on his scouting, his trading, and his signing ability?
Yeah, trades I'll give him a C+ because he's been good in trading for young guys and even like stopgap guys. So yeah. And the other thing too is trading guys like Stone and Carlson. He was kind of hamstrung there, right? Like there's only so much he can do in those situations. So I'll give him a C+, just kind of average. Signings, they've all been pretty good, but none have been exceptional. Like Hainsey was a good signing, guys like that. Ennis was great. So I'll give him a B on his free agent signings. As far as drafting goes, I got to give him an A. Like the prospects that he's got, not even just in his time as GM, but in his time as a scout.
Yeah.
The guys he's brought into this organization, like Shabbat, Colin White, just Brady Tkachuk. Obviously, that's the huge one.
That was his choice.
Yeah, he bats nearly 1,000 when it comes to drafting. So all in all, it's hard to kind of be too hard on Dorian just because not all the decisions he's making are his own, right? Like I feel bad for the guy. He's got his dream job and he has to do it a certain way. So I'll give him a C+ in terms of trades, a B for signings, and an A in drafting.
What I would give Pierre Dorion is I agree. I think he's hamstringed. When you have Eugene Melnyk at the helm, he's breathing down your neck. And no general manager wants to trade Carlson. No general manager wants to trade Stone, Hoffman, Duchesne, Dzingel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he had to. And honestly, minus the Stone deal, I like Brandstrom, but come on, we should have got it first. I think Pierre Dorion has really done a decent job, except the Hoffman deal. Hoffman deal was terrible. That's an F.
Oh, yeah.
But every
That's
other
garbage.
deal, especially the Carlson deal, the Duchesne deal was a whole fiasco, but the Carlson deal, I think, sways him from a C+ to a B- because it's really worked out. A top 6 forward, a potential top 5 pick, and now you got Rudolph Balcers as well. I think that really worked out for Ottawa. And Carlson doesn't look like he's worth the money anymore. I love Carlson, but the injury-prone is an issue. And on a team like San Jose, I'm happy he got paid, and he would have got paid anywhere. It's just unfortunate that his injuries are really starting to catch up to him. Hopefully it works out, but overall, for trades, I give Pierre Dorion a B-. For signings, there hasn't been really a lot that gave him more than a C+. So I'll throw in a C+ there just because I like Tyler Ennis as a player. But like Johnny Oduya, like Ron Hainsey, there hasn't been any sexy moves. So I really can't really comment really on that. It's really just depth guys, and it is what it is. Like Anders Nilsson, it was a nice signing, I guess, because he's turned into a really.
He traded for Condon too, right? And that saved their 2017 season. Obviously, it didn't age very well, but that move was huge for that playoff run.
Without that move, the Sanders would not have made the playoffs, without a doubt. So that was, once again, like you said, with the stopgap options, Pierre Dorion has a knack for finding diamonds in the rough. Somehow he's hit home runs on 5 guys like Brian Gibbons. Like come on, like I don't know what he's doing, but he has a good hockey mind. So with the trades and the signings, and now we look at the draft, A+. You got the Sanders prospect pool is top 5 in the league, in my opinion, after this upcoming draft. They have 2 top 5 picks. They have Brady Tkachuk. They have Jacob Bernard-Docker, Thomas Chabot, Colin White, Logan Brown, blah, 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 blah. The Sanders are full of talent. Drake Batherson in the late rounds. Give me a break, man. This is insane. Pierre Dorion is one of the best drafting general managers in the National Hockey League, and I will defend him every day for that point. Noah, what do you think of him?
I'm a little bit more optimistic in his trading just because, like you said, guys like Condon, and I would sort of put signings. I'll add waiver claims to that as well because there have been a couple good depth guys, Jace Howerluck, Magnus Pajärvi. They've turned out really well for waiver pickups for Ottawa. And so for trades, I'd give him a B, just a straight B, because he has been hamstrung. He did have to trade guys like all the Duchesne, Brassard, Stone, Carlson, yada, yada. But you look at a sort of a less talk about trade, the Dzingel trade. That was a fleece. Crazy. Now, 2 seconds and Anthony Duclair, and you got a really good player in Anthony Duclair. And then there's guys like Condon, and then the Nilsson trade, that whole little minor league but you end up getting Anders Nilsson. Like, it's just another small – he's really good at these small trades that don't really sound like much, like Mike Condon. You think Anderson will be fine and will be back soon. But no, Mike Condon really carries the load for that 2017 season. And so for me, I'd give him a B on trades. And for signings, again, yeah, like you guys have said, there hasn't been much. We don't sign many players. But I'll say like a B minus. Because I'll put waiver pickups in that scenario, in signings, because you're getting them for free. All the depth guys that we've signed have basically worked out for their roles, but nothing really more than that. So I'll give them a B miness.
One thing we didn't
and obviously for drafting, you can't nothing other than an A. There are a couple, two, not phenomenal picks. Logan Brown being one of them right now. So I can't give him an A+ because that was a 11th or 12th overall pick. But very good drafting GM, like you said, top in the NHL. And I will also defend him for that until I die.
Yeah. How about turning Cody Ceci into Connor Brown too?
Yeah, that
Connor Brown.
Like taking on the Zaitsev contract is, in my mind, that's kind of a wash. I know people have different feelings about it.
But Connor, it doesn't matter.
No, exactly. And Connor Brown is going to be huge for this team going forward. That's a guy that wins you playoff series. Like
he is the player that looks like a third liner, plays like a top liner. The guy gets points. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. He's a workhorse. And on top of that, the reason he's a top 6 forward isn't because of his offensive skills. It's because of how he plays defensively. And that is a coach's dream. I agree. Connor Brown was a steal. At the time, I was like, oh, okay. We could have got Jonathan Drouin, Taylor Hall for Cody Ceci, but Connor Brown, definitely more than just a consolation prize.
And who thought Chris Tierney was going to be as good as he has been? Like, I honestly saw Chris Tierney as like, he's 3 or 4 years old. He's a younger center, but he's played mostly on like the bottom 6 for San Jose. Now he's the second line center for Ottawa, and he's got 40 points this year. Like, he has these knack for these smaller players that just he's like the depth god. I don't get it.
I think what I'll just say about Chris Tierney is I don't know any other National Hockey League player that gets 55, 60 points a year, and I can't remember one goal he scored. I can't. Yeah. I don't know how they get points, but it's just I look at the score sheet. It looks like he just put it in himself. He's a good player. It's really rare to see a player get 60 points and you can't remember one play. It's just
big part of that is he's so hot and cold, right? Like he goes through long stretches where he doesn't score or doesn't get any points, and then he'll score like 3 shorthanded goals in 3 consecutive games or whatever. Yeah. So I like Tierney.
Good trade piece.
He's a good pickup for what the Carlson trade ended up being, right? And I think we're gonna need more time to fully see how that one shakes out, because I don't think Erik Karlsson is washed by any means. I think he's going to be I know, but like I think he's going to be I think he's going to still be great. Norris and those guys, like we still have to see, right? I mean, Norris looked really good. He had a great AHL season, but we still have to see how that game translates to the NHL level. I have no doubt it will. I'm just saying it has to actually happen before we can evaluate it, right? Yeah. And Balzers is going to be a great bottom 6 forward for the Sens. Like in terms of trades, I think he's done fairly well. That Bodker trade is like just tanks his rating for me, right? Like that's just the F that brings the entire average down. but it's hard to complain. And to me, the big cardinal sin was not getting a first for Mark Stone. That's unbelievable. That to this day, I cannot believe that they didn't get a first for him. Brandstrom's great.
No.
He's going to be a phenomenal defenseman, maybe even a future Norris Trophy winner. But Mark Stone with an extension all but lined up, like, come on, you have to get a first for that guy.
Like, when the trade was announced, I'm like, okay, second, Oscar Lindbergh and Brandstrom for Stone. I'm like, okay, well, it's crappy, but he didn't want to sign here, so we got something. Then I saw he signed a contract extension. I'm like, what the hell? You didn't get a first. You gave Stone away for 8 years. You didn't get a first and a prospect, but you got 2 seconds and Duclair for Dzingel. NHL GMs are very weird. But let's move on.
I think a part of it was before we move on, I just said I think a big part of that one was it coming down to the wire. Like we were very close to the deadline when that trade was made.
It was like 2:45.
It was done at like 2:30, 2:45. So I think that might have something to do with it. Just him kind of Dorian running out of time, but hard to knock him for any of those deals really.
But you just one more thing, because you're right. But you got to look. The Senators had time and day. They had 5-6 days. Don't wait until the last minute. If you know you're going to trade this guy, he told him he wasn't going to sign, and they kept him out for that New Jersey game 2 or 3 days before the deadline. You get rid of him as soon as possible, because you test the market and you trade him. You don't want to wait until the last hour of deadline day, because stuff like this happens and then it could mess it up, right? So.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to something that, Brandon, you're going to really like. You are a Buccaneers fan. Tom Brady, everyone coming to the team. With Tom Brady at the helm, where do you see your Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year?
I don't see why they can't win the Super Bowl next year.
Ooh.
Well, you got to think, right? They had the top passing attack in the league with a guy who threw 30 interceptions. So now you add Tom Brady to this mix, and let me just say, he can still throw the deep ball. For all you people that are saying he can't throw deep, he can still throw deep. He uncorked a 65-yard pass on one of his last plays of the season. The guy can still throw.
Yeah.
So now you put him in that mix with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, the best receiving tandem in the league. That's an offense that's going to put up points. With Bruce Arians running it,
yeah.
I'm excited. And people forget that Tampa had one of the best front sevens in the league last year, and they're all coming back. And that's without Jason Pierre-Paul for half a season. He didn't come back until 8 games into the season. So now you have Shaq Barrett, the sack king, and Jason Pierre-Paul rushing the passer on opposite sides. And Ndamukong Suh's back for a little more money than I like, but he's back in the middle with Vita Vea. And you got Levante David, who, again, for my money, most underrated linebacker in the league. And then you've got Devin White, who had some struggles with health in his first season, but that kid's going to be a stud. Like, he's got Defensive Player of the Year potential. So you add that to the mix, it's going to be huge. I think they need to supplement the offensive line, which they'll likely do through the draft, and they still need some help on the secondary. But especially in that division now, with Carolina is probably going to be bad this year. Atlanta, I don't see them making the playoffs this year. So now you have Tom Brady and Drew Brees in a slugfest from the NFC South. I like Tampa's chances in that.
What I mentioned in the last episode, by the way, check it out, of course, as well. The clip is on Twitter at Sens Talk Podcast is our Twitter. I mentioned that I'm really high on the Buccaneers. Last year, if you're able to win 7 games with a quarterback who throws the ball the same amount of times he throws it to your team, he throws it to the other team's corner, linebackers, safety, etc. 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. If you can win 7 games and remain in playoff contention with a quarterback who's incredibly inconsistent, why can't the Buccaneers do well next year? One of the most underrated defense in the league, as Brendan just said. And on top of that, an offense that's just dying to explode. And with Tom Brady at the helm, I don't see why not. I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders unless they build that O-line. And also Tom Brady, let's see how he does outside of Bill Belichick's system. However, I think the Buccaneers do really well. I think they make the playoffs, and I think they make some noise in the playoffs too. Super Bowl, too early to say, but I definitely see the Buccaneers really fulfilling their potential for the first time in like 4 years.
Two counterpoints to that. Most of the games they lost last year were by a touchdown or less, too. So there was a lot of games that could have gone the other way. They finished, I think, 7-9. Yeah. They could have even been 10-6.
I agree.
Like if even things had gone a little bit better. And on top of that, their offensive line didn't play great last year, but their protection through the last few weeks of the season especially was pretty good, and they were all hurt. Alex Kappa was playing with a broken arm for most of the season. So if that offensive line can get supplemented, stay healthy, and you eliminate the mistakes that cost them games, there's no reason they can't make some serious noise. And the Super Bowl's in Tampa this year, so how great would that be? Brady winning a Super Bowl, becoming the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl on home field with his new team. Can't write it any better.
It's all lining up. The ingredients are there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to finally explode and show us the potential. Like you said, Goodwin, Evans. That is an insane duo for wide receivers. Then you got the running back is nice, but your defense is what really excites me. And when your defense can win you games, and now you have a quarterback who wins games, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brady, the GOAT, will win you some games. The Buccaneers are ready to contend, in my opinion. It's just a matter of, will the ingredients mesh together? We'll have to see it. Noah, continuing with the Bucs.
Yeah. So now that Tom Brady's in, you know what that means. Jameis Winston's out. He's a quarterback that I was higher. I'm higher on Jameis Winston than most people are. But what were your thoughts on his tenure as a fan of the team?
Well, last year especially, he infuriated me because there was so many games that they could have and should have won that just got thrown away. And again, not all of that was his fault. He threw 30 interceptions. It's not like every interception was his fault. There was a lot of them where receivers made mistakes, or where defensive players just made, insane freak plays to pick the ball. Jameis gets a bad rep. I don't think there are 32 better quarterbacks in the NFL better than Jameis Winston right now.
Yeah.
I don't. I think he would start on a decent amount of teams right now. So look, like, the guy has all world ability. It's just his decision making that suffers. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's accurate. His interceptions are not a result of accuracy; they're a result of decision making. If you go back and watch them, like, he can put the ball on the eye of a gnat from 60 yards. So, like, he's got a cannon of an arm and he's accurate. So if he can eliminate those mistakes, I don't see a reason why he can't be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I got love for Jameis. He worked hard. He was always a pro, despite everything that happened off the field and everything. He never said a bad word about the organization, never complained, always, took everything on the chin. So I really wish him the best. Like, I hope he does well with another team. I only wanted two scenarios for this year. I wanted Tom Brady or I wanted Jameis Winston back. So, knowing that Tampa got Brady, time will tell if that was the better choice, but I don't really have any kind of negative feelings towards Jameis, just bad memories, but I mean, I'm a Bucs fan. I have 13 years of bad memories now, so.
You're a Sens fan, you're a Bucs fan. You made some poor choices when it comes
to lucky me.
Once again, the good thing about cheering for these teams that we do is once in a while, the hamburger run, you got Tom Brady joining your team. These things randomly just happen. I wanted to touch up on something. Last year, I think it was week 2 or week 3, I forget. The Niners played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Week 1.
No, we won. The 49ers won. They scored a touchdown in the last couple minutes, and then they won, and then they scored another touchdown.
Yeah, that was opening day, man. That was Tampa's first game.
That was the first game?
It was Tampa's.
Anyway, so all I remember is the Niners won the game, but what I would say is that defense, that was the first game that the Buccaneers that the Niners offense, the running game, was stopped. I want to give kudos to the Buccaneers defense because they held on to the final bell, and the 49ers were probably going to be the Super Bowl champions last year, but instead we decided to throw the ball and the game away instead of running it. Don't get me started. I'll get really mad. My face is already getting really – damn it, why did we just run the ball? Holy crap, man. Kyle Shanahan, it's simple. There's 200-plus yards on the field already. Run the effing ball with 6 minutes left. Oh, okay, Noah, you talk. I'm upset now.
Yeah, I obviously the problem with Jameis Winston was obviously his eyesight because he got laser eye surgery. Now he's just going to be the best quarterback in the league. So now if he signs with the Los Angeles Chargers, he'll be phenomenal.
Yeah, knowing my luck, that's what'll happen. I think the Chargers has kind of said they're not interested, but like you got to think there's another quarterback that's on the market too right now.
Cam Newton.
There's 2 actually. Cam Newton. Yeah. Phillip Rivers is on the market too. And look,
with the Colts, isn't he?
Oh no, yeah, he did sign with the Colts. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
my bad. But yeah, and I think and that's something that the coronavirus is screwing up right now too. Is guys can't take physicals, they can't work out for teams, so it's hard to know where guys are going to land. Jadeveon Clowney is still not on a football team.
That is weird.
That's bananas, man. Like that guy is one of the most
Yeah.
disruptive defensive players in the league.
Yeah.
So it just throws everything for a more loop, for more of a loop, right?
Yeah, as a Niners fan, I'm not complaining about Clowney not being signed yet, because let's keep him far away from my team as possible, because that guy is
he's a freak.
Moving forward now, let's talk about something that we all can agree with. Let's say we're going to the ballpark, all right? You're going to RCGT Park in Ottawa to see the Ottawa Champions play the Trois Rivières Eagles, okay? And you're with your boys or your girlfriend or whoever, and you're like, you're a few brews in, so you got a little bit of a buzz going, and now you're like, I need to eat something. Do I want to eat that frozen cardboard pizza? Do I want to eat the hot dog, a pretzel? Brandon, when you're at a sports game, you're a few brews in, what are you eating?
I'm honestly not a big fan of eating at sports games. I don't do it very often. I'd rather just kind of sit and watch. If I'm gonna get something, like if I go to a Jays game every now and then, I'll probably get a hot dog, maybe like a pretzel, that kind of thing. Something salty.
And go to a ball game without a hot dog, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I went to a Jays game last summer and I got a hot dog. Yeah. But I mean, I'll have a beer maybe, but I'm not a big stadium food guy. I'd rather just kind of watch the game.
What's your beer choice?
Like at a sporting event or just in general?
At a sporting event and in general.
In general, I'm a big fan of the Mill Street Organic Lager.
Actually, it's not bad.
Yeah, no, I get a lot of heat for that on Twitter because they're like, organic beer, what's wrong with you? But no, I love it. I like good Canadian beer. At a sports game, I'd probably get like a Molson Canadian or something like that. I don't know. I'm not. I don't have champagne taste or anything like that. I like what I like.
It's funny you mentioned the organic, because I won't drink it if it's my choice, but like if it's there, I'll have it. Like I had it in my house once, so I had a couple watching a game. But no, like for me, firstly, let's talk about what I'll eat. And no one and I have a tradition. Every single 67s or Sens game or whatever, we get a poutine. Probably not the best for my health as an older person now. I'm probably gonna have to cut down on that habit, because we go to a lot of games and eat a lot of poutine. Not a good combo. But for beer, at a game, obviously a Molson, Canadian, Coors, whatever. But if I'm at home, Heineken, Stella, that's what I really like. I just like the taste. It's just really pure. Noah, I know you're not a beer guy, but what type of food would you eat?
Nah, yeah, I'm not a beer guy. I'll just take a Coke or something, but really a poutine. But if I'm at a ball game, because usually every summer the family goes to a city where there is a baseball team. Like last year we went to New York, we saw the Mets. So then I got a hot dog, I think. And the year before I went to Boston to see the Red Sox again. Nice. I got like a hot dog. And yeah, and that game was funny because the Red Sox put 11 runs in one inning against the Miami Marlins.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, definitely a hot dog at a baseball game. But anywhere else, if there is poutine, I will buy a poutine, because poutine is just top tier food.
Amen. It's if I went to somebody's house expecting a lavish dinner and they put a box of poutine in front of me, I'd be A-okay with that instead of having a steak. Honestly, if I had to pick one food to live on for the rest of my life, it might be poutine.
All right, so we've talked about hockey, we've talked about a bit of football, but do you watch any other sports, baseball or basketball?
Yeah, I would consider myself a casual fan of both of them. I'm trying to get more into them. There's only so much time in a day, right? Like to watch sports, and when you cover the Sens like I do, it's kind of got to be all encompassing if you want to do it well. Plus, I think my girlfriend will kill me in my sleep if I try to watch any more sports. But no, I followed the Raptors run last year. That kind of got me into basketball. I enjoyed watching a little bit more of it this year. Baseball, I like, Canadian. I got to love the Jays. And so I cheer for the Jays. I watch them when I can, and I get to a game every now and then. So, yeah, I would say I'm a casual fan. I like some of the fringe sports, too. I'm a big UFC fan, big mixed martial arts fan, but obviously loving the UFC because that's, the best competition on the planet. and football, right? Like we talked football, like you said. So hockey and football are my main sports, but I dig the UFC, and I'm getting more into baseball and basketball.
For me, I think I'm a huge. It's well known in my friend group and my family that I'm a huge sports fan. I love sports. I'm a sports nerd. But with basketball, I wasn't really a fan. I was more casual, like you said. It wasn't really anything. But in 2015, I started watching Syracuse college, Syracuse Orange, the basketball team. 2016, they went to like the Final Four, I believe, or Sweet Six. They were in the Elite Eight or whatever. I forget what it was, but we went on a huge run in 2016. That hooked me. Ever since 2016, I've loved college basketball. I wasn't really a big fan of the NBA because it was always Cleveland versus Golden State, but I was a Raptors fan. Like I had the updates on my phone if they won or lost, and I had the game on once in a while because I cared. It's Team Canada, basically, right? But that when they got Kawhi, I'm like, I gotta watch. So I started watching a little bit more when I had the time, which wasn't often, but like usual, like when the Raptors were in the playoffs, I usually watched every playoff game because it's fun to watch, and that run was insane. So I'm not gonna call myself the biggest Raptors fan or a bandwagoner. I'm more of just a casual Raptors fan. Like I'm like, I'll get hyped, but I'm not like I'm not with the Raptors like the Sens, for example. The Sens are my baby.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we're stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Obviously, Sens fan, but again, like you, Brandon, football is definitely the other favorite sport. Go Eagles! But yeah, so football and then basketball, like Brandon said, it would definitely be like I was more casual. I think I was a little bit more into it when they made that first like decent playoff run. They played the Brooklyn Nets, I think, and when Kyle Lowry got like decked by Kevin Garnett at the end to lose, that was like the first year I was watching.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put on a couple games here and there, but definitely more casual. Baseball, I just like watching baseball in general. I don't really have a team, but it's not necessarily that I'm a casual fan. I really like baseball and I really like watching it, but I sort of just like following the sport for me. And I'll say one other thing though. I don't think you can be considered a bandwagoner if you're a Canadian and you're cheering for the Raptors. I'm just saying, if you start cheering for the Raptors when Kawhi got traded, the Raptors are your team. They're like your default team if you're Canadian. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like with the Brooklyn series, Game 7 when Masai Ujiri said F Brooklyn or F New York, whatever it was. I loved that. It was cool, so that got me into it. Onto Team Canada, I was always when the Wizards, like for example, swept them. Like I'm still a casual fan, but when they acquired Kawhi, I'm like, this is once in a million to watch a generational talent play basketball night in and night out. So I started watching more games. But yeah, like you said, casual for sure. And Noah, I know if in the postseason, if the Blue Jays are in, you'll probably favor the Blue Jays. But once again, I respect that you're more of a casual baseball fan because there's so many elements to baseball that it's one of the sports where you don't have to really have a team, to be honest.
Yeah.
Moving on now. Going back to the Ottawa Senators, they have had a lot of players, especially when you're in a city like Ottawa, an organization next to Toronto, next to Montreal. No one really cares about Ottawa. So a lot of players are not put into the media spotlight, like Milan McCulloch, for example. Multiple-time 30-goal scorer. Probably didn't hear about it until now. So, Brandon, for you, who do you think for former Sens players who did not get enough media attention?
I'd have to say the one that comes to mind would be Nick Foligno. I've had dealings with I've had dealings with him. We're from the same hometown, right? We're both from Sudbury, so and he played for the Wolves actually at the same time that my cousin was playing for the Wolves. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so I got to meet him a few times before he even went to Ottawa, actually. That's awesome. But he's a really classy guy. Like he's a fantastic guy. Him and his brother Marcus, too. The whole Foligno family are just phenomenal people. They do a lot for the community, and they're just all around great folks. And on top of that, Foligno on the ice, like he was so underrated when he was in Ottawa. He played a great two-way game, chip in offensively, just a real heart and soul guy. One of those guys who was always battling for 60 minutes, and that's something that's been amplified since he's gone to Columbus and become the captain there. He's very clearly the heart and soul, the leader of that team. So I would say, one guy who definitely didn't get enough credit for his time in Ottawa would be Nick Foligno.
I think it's sad that this is one of the most forgotten moments in Sanders history. The Foligno leap. Anyone remember that when he jumped?
I do, yeah.
Like, that is such a classic sports moment, and it's not talked about enough. It's not talked about enough. Like,
No.
That is something you probably won't see again. Brady Tkachuk probably won't be leaping up in the air. Because I think that was Nick Foligno's father did that, right? So
yeah, it was the Foligno jump. He did it perfectly too, actually. Like, he was
landed.
Stuck the landing and everything. Yeah, it was awesome.
Noah, any?
I gotta say, it's sort of like it's funny how most of the former Senators, they don't get any coverage, and then the second they're traded, like Nick Foligno gets traded to Columbus. Now he's so good. He's a big, great guy. But when he was on Ottawa, no one remembers him. I'd sort of say Jacob Silverberg when he was on Ottawa.
That's a very good one too.
That's a great one.
He was really underrated. And one thing that really never got talked about, he went like 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 in his first career shootout attempts. And he beat Brodeur, Carey Price, and Lundqvist or something in the shootout. And that was pretty crazy. But then he was also just a really good young piece for Ottawa. Ended up getting Bobby Ryan for him, which at the time for me was a good trade. But now everyone's like, oh, he's such a great second liner for the Anaheim Ducks. And it's just Ottawa doesn't get enough coverage. Even Alfredson, no one gives Alfredson enough credit for being the best Senators player in history.
If he was a Leaf, he'd be in the Hall of Fame already.
Yeah,
exactly.
If he was not from Ottawa, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. It's unfortunate. Two things. Firstly, Jakob Silverberg is the reason Sens stock started, to be honest. When he scored that shootout winner against the Devils to win 3-2 on February 17th, 2013, we made our first video. That's what kick-started everything. Now, my most underrated, I guess, Sens player that never got enough media coverage, Cree Anderson. In my opinion, in his prime, Cree Anderson was a top 10 goaltender, and he was never put into the top 15. This guy carried the Sanders into playoff contention every year when we didn't deserve it. With Paul McLean at the helm, the Sanders got outshot by 10 shots every game. We allowed 40 shots, and Craig Anderson said no to 38 or 39 of them every single night. Craig Anderson is one of the most underrated goalies in National Hockey League history. I will happily say that. Because this guy, for 9 years now,
2011, I think he got, yeah.
It's been 9 years. Yeah. He carried the ship, carried the workload, and has carried this team to a conference final run, a second round run. This guy has kept us in it every single year. He's got to stop cutting his hand from cutting chicken. That's 2 or 3 times. But one of the most underrated goalies in National Hockey League history. And I think, you know what, this guy really needs to get more credit than he gets because he is the reason the Senators have had success in the last 10 years.
They would have won the Cup if they had made the final in 2017, and it was because of Anderson. He backpacked them the whole way.
That game 7 alone.
He played that whole series with a fractured back or something. He had this crazy back injury, and he's 35 years old at the time, carrying a National Hockey League team to the conference finals against Pittsburgh, against Crosby. Absurd. But the last thing I'd say about Craig Anderson is that he's also he's the heart and soul of the team. He's whenever Ottawa's not playing well, you always counted on Anderson, at least in the first few years when he got traded, to really steal a game. He would steal games, and especially against divisional rivals like Toronto and Montreal. He stole games for Ottawa, and you can't not like Craig Anderson. You had the story when his wife got diagnosed with cancer, and he's just had a great story and a great career with Ottawa. Has to be, I'd say, retire his jersey.
Yeah, honestly, if they retire Phillips, I think Anderson has made a huge impact. The Anderson family, actually, to tie them both in. I think this is why you can make the argument for Anderson getting his number retired. The Anderson family has made such a huge impact, not only in the Ottawa community, but the National Hockey League community as a whole. Nicole Anderson has touched many hearts. Craig Anderson has really put a big effort into the community. It's a wonderful family. I've been in contact with them. I interviewed Anderson a few years ago in front of the Canadian Tire Center. The Anderson family is a great one, and you can certainly make the case for retiring Anderson's number. Craig Anderson, just talking about how he's carried teams on his fractured back in Game 7. We don't need to talk about how it ended. Not his fault. That goal he could not have stopped. But that game should have ended 5 times in the first overtime if it wasn't for Craig Anderson. So kudos. I'll give him a clap right now because kudos to him. He is the reason we have had a lot of success, and He's probably not playing in the NHL next year. So congratulations to Anderson on a great career while we're talking about him.
So a little bit of veering away from sports, but since there's been a lot of time on everyone's hands, obviously, has there been any Netflix shows or anything that you've really been caught up with, or you're binge watching shows recently?
I did Tiger King. That was pretty insane. I think that's one everyone's watched, but Tiger King was just mental. Like I finished it a couple weeks ago now, and like I still have no idea what I watched.
It was the weirdest feeling yesterday. I'm not even crapping you. Last night, I walk down my stairs, I look at the TV, and it's Tiger King, and my parents are watching, and I'm like, are we really at that stage of the quarantine or self-isolation that we're watching Tiger King? I watched the first episode. I might have to watch it again. Everyone's telling me to keep on watching. It gets better, so I'm like, okay, I'll watch. Joe Exotic. The story's crazy. I gotta watch it. You know what?
It gets way crazier, man. You have no idea.
It gets way crazier than episode 1.
Oh yeah, you haven't even scratched the surface though. So
Holy crap! Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Noah, what about you?
I've finished the whole thing. Again, it's pretty crazy. It wasn't my favorite thing, but that's just more so just because the documentary part wasn't my favorite. It's not my favorite kind of genre for TV shows, but honestly, it was pretty crazy. But when I heard Tiger King, when everyone's like, oh, this thing's so intense, and Tiger King, I thought it was going to be like a superhero show about a guy who's like a villain who owns a bunch of tigers or something. And when I saw it's about this crazy guy who just owns a bunch of exotic animals, that was a shock.
Yeah. And murder, and no spoilers, not going to say who or what, but murder is involved too, ladies and gentlemen, so definitely check it out.
So tied into the Netflix binge watching question, have you ever been into the NHL video games or any sports video games or any video games in general? And obviously there's more time to play them now. Which ones were you in?
I've always been into the NHL games. Some I like better than others, but I have played a lot of video games. Less time these days just with the way life is, but more now in quarantine. My favorite series of all time is the Red Dead Redemption series. Red Dead Redemption 2 is my favorite game ever. That game was just an experience from beginning to end. Last of Us is a great game. Really excited for the sequel. I'm a big fan of those kind of third-person like RPG games. I've been playing more simulators lately though. Like I'm playing Jurassic World right now, which is pretty crazy.
Oh, I saw you tweet that, right?
Yeah. It's like a Zoo Tycoon with dinosaurs, so it's pretty wild.
Sounds crazy.
There have been some good and bad NHL games. Like NHL 15 was down low, but NHL 14 was really good.
NHL 14. I don't know what they did from NHL 14. The Live the Life series was insane, and now you look what's going on with 2K, NBA 2K. EA Sports just doesn't give a damn, and the next gen's probably gonna be even worse than what it is right now. It's really disappointing to see how lackluster and how little they care about the fans of the National Hockey League for the game product because there's no competition. The game I'm playing a lot is Grand Theft Auto 5. I'm playing online, making a lot of money, a lot of activities you shouldn't do in real life, but it is a fun game and really passes the time because GTA, it's online. It's like you're in the city. You can play with friends. So it's a game that you can't get tired of because it's something new every day. So it's something that I'm happy to be playing. NHL 20, I already kind of got tired of it, so I'm going to take a week break, maybe go back to it. Noah, I know you're a big video game type of guy. What are you playing? Or what are you playing, plural?
So I'd say firstly, NHL 20. I haven't really done Hockey Ultimate Team before this year, but I don't know why. The concept of it is really interesting, so I've just been grinding Hockey Ultimate Team, and there's tons of content to play on that, so I think EA has done a solid job with that. Past Hockey Ultimate Team, though, I'm waiting for Valorant to come out. That's a big game that everyone's talking about. But then CSGO, I've played a bit. There's some Overwatch sprinkled in. There's so much time for me to pick and choose what games I want to play. But a game that I used to play a lot was MLB, the show games. I still have 16. I still play 16 sometimes on my Be a Pro or whatever it's called. I'd play pitcher, but it's a good time. Yeah, there are just a lot of video games that you can try out right now, and obviously now you have the time to.
Perfect time. Yeah. Moving forward now, let's talk about the National Hockey League and the future of the National Hockey League. In the next 3 to 5 years, just like what happened with Chicago and Los Angeles, you see the fall-offs and you see the come-ups like Colorado, Calgary. Of course, you always got the Blues there, of course, Washington, Vegas, etc. In the next 3 to 5 years, what teams right now that are like contending, like Dallas, Blues, etc., for example, where do you see them in 3 to 5 years, and where do you see teams like Ottawa and Detroit in 3 to 5 years? Like, where do you see the league shifting?
Yeah, I see Boston still hanging around. Despite the guys that they're going to lose, they still kind of have a young core in place there. Ottawa and Detroit probably have – Ottawa has one of the best prospect pools in the league. Yeah. Detroit will, with the way Yzerman drafts. I'm pretty confident in that. It's hard to see Tampa falling off, too, because they do have a decent amount of youth there, at least guys that aren't going to be crazy old in a few years.
Like Brady Point.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of falling off, I think San Jose is primed for it. They're aging really fast. Washington, too, when guys like Ovechkin and Backstrom are done, I don't know how stocked their cupboard is for that eventuality. And St. Louis is just in cap hell right now. They're really tight against it. If the cap goes down next year, they're in trouble, or even stays the same. So those are the teams that I kind of see hanging around and falling off.
I'd have to agree. I think if you look at, Detroit and Ottawa, of course, the prospect pool has great potential. I think you look at Calgary, a team that has skill and just can't put it together. This year, the goaltending was inconsistent. The whole team was inconsistent. I think I look at a team like Calgary, and I'm wondering in the next 3 to 5 years, are they contending? Because this can go 2 ways with Calgary. Are they contending, or are they rebuilding? And that's the question I'm asking, because I don't know. And that's the problem with Calgary. They have the team built to be contenders, but they're playing like they're on the latter half of their contention. They're trying to be going to probably go through a rebuild soon. So we'll see. They have prospects coming up, but honestly, Calgary is one of those wildcard teams where they could, if they win the cup, I wouldn't be shocked. If they fell out of the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked. It's really weird.
I see that there's a lot of young teams that really, like you've said, Detroit, but I sort of want to focus a bit on the Canadian teams, because I think in the next 3 to 5 years, I think all Canadian teams can be in the playoffs for consecutive years. Like Ottawa, obviously, we've talked about their great prospect pool end on end, but Toronto, great young core, as much as we hate to admit it. You got Montreal, a lot. They're on the rise, I think, under the radar for sure. Vancouver was in the playoffs with this young core, just fell out, I think, but they're also a good, really young team. Edmonton has been on the rise. They're at the top of the division. And Calgary, you've talked about. I think they're on the contending side. And as well, Winnipeg, they're just stacked. They're stacked on offense. I see a really good rise of the Canadian teams, and I think that Canada's finally going to get a Stanley Cup 5 years from now.
Honestly, can't disagree with that. I can't.
Yeah, and
I don't see how it doesn't happen.
It's a team.
5 to 7 years. There's
a team that's not talked about a lot, but they have the best prospect core in the league. I think hands down, the LA Kings. They're going to return to glory big time, and I'm excited to see the Kings back, because all the California teams are kind of on the down low right now.
Yes.
Anaheim hasn't really been high up there since they've won the Cup. The Sharks have been perennial disappointments, and then the Kings, since their Cup win, haven't made the playoffs, or maybe they made the playoffs once or twice. They lost to Vegas one year, but they didn't make the playoffs the year after they won the Stanley Cup in 2014, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, I think it could shift a lot more than people think because of this salary cap problems that we're having now. Like St. Louis is a really good team, but what's going to happen next year? Is that cap going to fall? Because they don't have room for it to fall. I think the one team that will stay around is Boston, because Boston just doesn't suck. Boston can't.
Boston and the city of Boston doesn't lose. I don't know why. Exactly. They just win always.
Yeah, they just always find a way to have young core, and they're always good.
I'm talking about
they're never doubting Boston. The city of Boston just is on some sort of prosthetics or there's something going on in Boston. I don't know what, but they're always good. They're always contending. The Celtics, the Patriots. The Patriots are probably going to make the playoffs this year. Just knowing the city of Boston, they're going to find a way to pull some guys out for $1 million. And yeah, it's kind of crazy what Boston does.
That's true. You know, speaking of Boston, the Red Sox, they're always good. The Patriots, they're always good. Probably this year they're not going to do too well, even though Jarrett Stidham's a good quarterback. I think they're probably going to try to get Trevor Lawrence. The Celtics, Boston has something in the water there, and I want some of that water here because I want some contention with our sports teams here. The Red Blacks have delivered, but it's time for this team to deliver.
All right, now we're up to the final question here. I'm a really big goalie guy, so I'm happy we get to end with this. There are so many good goalies. I think it's been the rise of the good goalies in the league over the past few years because there have been years in the past where there were more and more starters weren't really high caliber, but now you have at least 20 goalies who you can really have as really good goalies. There's obviously Binnington, Vasilevsky, Holtby, Bishop. The list goes on and on. Who is the best of them all, or would you give a top 5?
Well, I'll give you the best one right off the bat. I'll give you Tuukka Rask, who I think is the best goaltender in the league. His numbers are insane. 929 save percentage, 212 goals against average. And last playoff, he should have won the Conn Smythe, even though the Bruins lost. So it's got to be Rask for me. Top 5, I'll go from 5 up. I'll give you Robin Lehner. I'll give you Jordan Binnington. I'll give you Connor Hellebuck, Andre Vasilevsky, and then Rask at number 1.
I think what's notable about that list, one of the players that's one of the two goaltenders that are noticeably off the list, that could be considered a hot take, would be Darcy Kemper and Ben Bishop being left off that list. Darcy Kemper, I understand if you didn't put him on the list because he was only half a year where he's playing out of his mind because injuries forced him to not stop playing. But Ben Bishop being left off the list is a little surprising. I think Ben Bishop doesn't get the recognition he deserves because Dallas as a whole has really been kind of disappointing. They've started turning it around this year, but last year, everyone expects them to be cup contenders. And, in the playoffs they did well, but in the regular season, for some reason, they're a little inconsistent. Always Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin. But once they get to the playoffs, Ben Bishop goes on another level. So I put Ben Bishop in the top 5, maybe over Leonard because he has more long-term success. But Leonard's certainly top 10 in my opinion, and the success story of Robin Lehner is one of the most inspirational ones in the last few years in the NHL for sure.
And the crazy thing is that there's so many things I would change about that list because there's so many good goalies.
That's
where is Carey Price in this whole thing? Carey Price was known for the past 5 years as the best bona fide number 1 best goalie in the league. And now he's good. The people say he's good. And on top of that, you have a lot of teams that are switching from their still good, but really old goalies to younger goalies. There are a lot of teams like Arizona has 2 good goalies. You have Washington who has Samsonov. You have the Flyers who just switched to Carter Hart. There are so many younger goalies. Every team is going to have one now.
I think that's a great point because Pittsburgh has 3 young goalies. Matt Murray, Casey DeSmith, Tristan Jarry. 2 of those 3 are all-stars. Tristan Yarry's an all-star. Matt Murray's an all-star. By the way, Matt Murray is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. So Pittsburgh, I don't know who's going to get traded first, but somebody's going to be dealt there soon.
I will say that Vegas, I sort of stumbled into having a really good goalie, the Marc-Andre Fleury, of course, because Pittsburgh was sort of in that struggle. Seattle's going to have no trouble finding a goalie. There's going to be so many people trying to find a job.
Vegas has 2 now. They have Fleury and Leonard.
Yep.
Yeah, there's so many options. There you can pick a goalie from every single NHL team, from expansion for Seattle, and you'll be happy with it. It'll be Thomas Greiss. It'll be Yaroslav Halak. It'll be Anton Khudobin. They're all really good goalies. And so I'm really happy about where the NHL is right now in terms of goalies.
I know this might be a hot take, but if I'm Vegas and you're looking at the expansion draft, if you can't work out a deal to protect Marc-Andre Fleury, do you really protect Fleury over the younger Robin Lehner, who has starting capabilities to contend for more years when Fleury is almost at the end of his career? I love Fleury, and he's a Hall of Famer and definitely one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League. However, if you're looking at the future and the cap issues with the organization, you got Mark Stone, Pacioretty all locked up long term. You want to get a starting goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury is going to want a lot of money and is making a lot of money. Robin Lehner, you can sign him for 5.5 long term. That's not bad considering what you would have to pay for Marc-Andre Fleury or another top goalie. So I believe Robin Lehner is a top 10 goalie, and I believe you can get him on an affordable contract. So if I'm Vegas, hot take, I try to protect Fleury from trade an asset to keep Fleury. But if you can't, you protect Robin Lehner if he wants to be there long term, because that's your future. And unfortunately, Fleury, love the Flower. I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this. But the Flower is older, and you got to look at the future when the cap is so tight right now.
There's just too many options. Seattle, whoever, I don't know who that GM is, but he's just going to be over the moon. You don't even have to worry about it. Someone's going to be reluctantly, there's going to be so many trades that are going to happen to not take a goalie, and Seattle's just going to be great. It would be funny though if Fleury got to his second expansion team. That would be really funny.
It'd be awesome if Fleury brought in the second expansion team to a cup final. That would be just legendary. The guy is a workhorse and one of the best goalies ever if he carries two expansion teams to the Stanley Cup final. So honestly, for that reason alone, I'd love to see it happen.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that, but yeah, I think you definitely consider exposing Fleury and maybe running with Lehner. So much of it depends on this summer, right? The free agency situation. So we'll see what happens. I think Vegas likes having Fleury for right now, but in terms of a long-term solution, they'll have to see just where they're at overall. They got good young guys coming up to the system too, so I don't think Vegas is going to have any problems either way.
We shall see, but I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. So, Brandon, before we end the podcast, episode number 4, it's been really fun having you on. Why don't you tell everyone where they can check your stuff out, check you out on social media, etc.?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate coming on, but especially being the first guest. So that's a big honor for sure. You guys can find me, Brandon Maki 6 on Twitter. Find my writing at Silver7. Internal Budget is the name of the podcast, wherever podcasts are found. And you can find the podcast account on Twitter as well. It's just at Internal Budget.
Perfect. And Noah, did you have any final comments?
No, it was great having you on, Brandon, and we're really happy that you were the first guest because you were awesome. A lot of things to talk about, and we really appreciate that here.
I appreciate you guys, fellas. Thank you so much.
Of course, anytime. So that is it for episode number 4 of the Best of 7 podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. Brandon, thank you very much for joining the show. If you haven't already, check out Internal Budget. Great, phenomenal work. So after this, head over there, listen to some more sports talk. Besides that, thank you for watching. This is Brandon Plant for the Best of 7 podcast. Please stay home. Please stay safe. Self-isolate. Let's beat COVID-19. I hope everyone watching this and listening remains safe and healthy. And we'll see you next week for episode number 5 of the Best of 7 podcast. My name is Brandon Plant, and that is it for this episode. I'll see you next week.